Day, the earnings growth rate showed to be even higher than the expectations that we'd seen. So in other words, a lot of companies are beating those already very high expectations. We have housing and consumer sentiment in focus this week as we get a little deeper, although still very early into earnings season. I'm Brandon Steele, financial advisor with Mainsail Financial Group here in Bellevue. And our goal is to leave you feeling more empowered each week. We share some of the market news, the trends that we're watching, and weed out some of the noise that comes along with that as well. And this week, we're really going to focus on a couple key topics, one being housing, another being consumer sentiment. But for reference, we are also getting a bit further into earnings season as well, and an earnings season that has very high expectations. So I will touch on that very briefly, although it's still too early to say how this all shakes out. A couple things to touch on. First off, before I get into housing, we did have leading economic indicators come out on Monday. So leading economic indicators showed down 0.2%. I did want to highlight that briefly. This doesn't necessarily predict what we may see ahead, but nonetheless, it is something just to make sure to bring to the table here. We also had some housing data come out over the last week or so. So we had mortgage applications come out. They showed mortgage applications were up 1.9%. Housing starts were also higher than expected. So we still have some more housing data to come out, but in general, a stronger sign, although keep in mind some of this is off of a pretty weak, couple of months here looking backwards. We also had consumer sentiment come out. This did show higher than expected here as well, which is a bit surprising. Obviously, there's a lot going on, and so it's good to see consumer sentiment show a little higher than the markets had anticipated. The other thing I do want to touch on briefly is what's going on the earnings side of things, and we'll kind of wrap up with that and keep it a little brief today as we do have a client meeting here this evening. But basically, for earnings coming into this season, if you tuned in recently there, I'd kind of touched on the expectations coming into this earnings season, which are very, very high. Now, here we are, July 23rd. At this point, quite a few companies have reported, but it's still early on in this season. Nonetheless, what I wanted to highlight is that the earnings expectations coming into this were over 20%. So far, this is as of Friday, so bear with me a little bit. There's been some data since, but as of Friday, the earnings growth rate showed to be even higher than the expectations that we'd seen. So in other words, a lot of companies are beating those already very high expectations. And this, if it continues, would suggest that we could see this would be, I believe, the second quarter where we've seen above 20% earnings growth. And so this is very telling of the strength of the companies that make up the market. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges when we look at the economy and geopolitical things and you name it to keep an eye on that, have shifted some headlines and some short-term market movements. But if we're looking at earnings, certainly it shows to be a very strong case so far and very high expectations coming into this earnings season, as I had covered recently as well. So it's too early. We are still very, very early stages of this earnings season. So too early to declare victory, but I did want to share what we're seeing so far just to kind of keep you up to date. And the biggest reason I want to touch on this is because next week, I believe it is, that we have the big tech earnings reporting. So that'll be very telling of where we do go from here when you look at it from a market cap perspective. So so far, strong signs. Next week, a lot to unfold, and we will continue to keep you posted on how earnings season is going. But generally, this is what we're keeping a very close eye on because of how strong these expectations are. And ultimately, if companies do deliver on that, just a sign of how strong some of these companies' profits are at the moment and how that can translate to market performance from here. I hope that's helpful. We will keep it short and sweet here this week, given that we do have a client event here this evening. But be sure to tune in next Thursday. We will catch you up on some earnings trends, as well as just some of the more general market updates that have come across in the meantime. But leading up to that, have a great upcoming weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday at 3.